Well, it's so great to see everybody. The International Parking and Mobility Institute is pleased to present this learning lab titled The Galveston Blueprint, Optimizing Officer Security and Efficiency with Ticket by Mail, presented by GTechna. My name is Kathleen Federici, and I'm your moderator for today's learning lab. If you need assistance at any time during the program, please raise your hand or use the chat feature and we will assist you. Today's presentation will last 60 minutes and will include a specific question and answer period. However, you can queue up a question for us at any time during today's presentation. To enter a question through the system, simply click the Q&A tab and type your question and press enter. And we'll be happy to get to your question towards the end of the presentation. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to our two speakers. Mike Bourret, VP Sales and Marketing. Mike is an electronics and instrumentation technologies expert with more than 30 years of experience working in tech. Mike brings with him practical experience in a variety of tech business ventures across a number of verticals spanning a global market. Mike's been with GTechna for 8 years as VP of Sales and Marketing. Our second presenter is Butch Stroud, City Marshal, City of Galveston. Butch retired from the Galveston Police Department, GPD, in 2010 after serving more than 20 years on active duty and has remained a reserve officer. Following his retirement, he was rehired by the city as GPD's Director of Support Services. The city reopened its City Marshal's office in 2017 in response to City Council's desire to make code enforcement a priority. Butch was selected in 2019 to be Galveston's City Marshal, continuing his nearly 3 decades of service to Galveston residents. He oversees code enforcement, the paid parking programs, taxi and wrecker regulation, and other law enforcement activities consistent with his duties and responsibilities. Mike and Butch, welcome, and the audience is all yours.
Good afternoon, and I'm glad everybody was here. Hope provide some good information that helps everyone. The city of Galveston is a tourist city with several 100,000 visitors every year. On the weekends, a lot of people show up if it's good weather. Galveston is an island, runs along the Gulf of Mexico. The Marshal's office duties include parking enforcement along the seawall, UTMB medical facility, and downtown area. Technology utilized by the city. We have automatic license plate readers on our vehicles to scan the license plates and the software to determine if a vehicle is paid to park. We get notifications whether or not a citizen needs to be issued a citation utilizing our laptops in our cars. The concerns that we had for issuing citations was congestion along the seawall. The seawall runs along the entire island and along the Gulf of Mexico and gets extremely congested with vehicles and people. The complaints were from the community. To determine how to continue to enforce parking regulations on the seawall and not have to impede traffic with enforcement vehicles was our goal. Our solution was ticket by mail. We presented our option to City Council and explained the benefits of the program. The ticket by mail helps officers do their job better and safer. City Council ultimately decided to implement the ticket by mail program. The need for change was, as I said, relieve congested traffic along the seawall. With the pedestrians and all the traffic, it was hard to move around. The goal was to come up with a plan and a program where officers don't have to stop in the lane of traffic to issue a citation. With our goal of going green, we're actually looking at replacing some of our older vehicles with green vehicles this budget year, try to help with the environment. The stakeholders that we had to talk to were the City Council. We had to explain to them the best initiative for the city is ticket by mail worth the cost. And once we explained our goals, the decision by City Council was unanimously in favor of implementation. The implementation cost was a factor, and they understood that was necessary for accomplishing our goals. City Council recognized that we're doing our best to resolve the congestion and continue to enforce parking along the seawall. One of the obstacles that is unique to Texas was the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicle. There's a lengthy process to access their database to obtain the information for the owner of a vehicle so that you can get their information to mail a ticket to them. So our expectations for the ticket by mail program is to reduce the congestion, cover more area with the same number of employees, issue more citations for violations in the same amount of time. The ultimate goal is to increase compliance and decrease the number of contested citations. Our goal for educating the public and the visitors is with our PR team, we'll upload the information to our city website. We'll also have this broadcast on Channel 16, which is a local business TV channel, our local newspapers. During our city councils, they're always broadcast on Channel 16 for everyone to view as well. And then local Houston television stations will get the word out to our visitors and from up north in Houston and the metro area. So what's next? Our goal is to broaden the ticket by mail program to other two districts, downtown district and the UTMB district, which is our actually medical facility district. The city's goal is to be solely ticket by mail for parking violations and utilize our current system, but the parking violations issued for failing to pay to park will be used for ticket by mail. In the future, we're looking at incorporating our residential parking permit program into the ticket by mail using our automatic license plate readers. That'll enhance our neighborhood enforcement abilities, using this program as much as we can for as many parking regulations that we have.
Well, thanks a lot, Butch. Now to the part where how it works. So before I get into what we're going to be doing for Galveston, let me just first explain a little bit about ticket by mail. One of the first questions I always get asked is, well, you know, or what people tell me from other cities is that, you know, we put tickets on the windshield and it's always been like that. A lot of people think that when you go to ticket by mail, it's like a all or nothing type thing, but it really isn't. It's, you know, it's ticket by mail is something you should look at as something that you can ease into. And so what I'm showing you here is some use cases of 3 different use cases. So completely to the right here, if I highlight this here, this first section here is actually something that we deployed almost a year ago in Washington, D.C. And actually, there's a bit of a fact here. Washington, D.C. won an IPMI award actually for this particular type of enforcement. And as you can see from the picture, there's a car blocking the bike lane, and that is an infraction. And if you can imagine having to go put a ticket on the windshield for a car blocking a bike lane, I don't think it would be too safe. And plus, maybe the driver's still in the car. So really not well designed for the traditional way of doing parking enforcement, and better designed for ticket by mail. And like I said previously, IPMI award, we won an award for this. So we're quite proud of that. So like I said, different types of infractions. You can start very slowly. You can start with one type of infraction or a specific zone. So another example would be the one in the middle, and actually Butch spoke about this. They want to implement this down the road, and that's an RPP zone, residential parking zone. And Milwaukee's also looking at this right now to enforce, because they have to do an RPP zone enforcement in the middle of the night in areas that are maybe not too safe to walk the beat. So they're looking at that also. One that no one's doing yet, but I was hopeful that maybe somebody listening, one of the cities listening on right now will say, hey, listen, this is a great idea. I wish somebody would pick this up. This is another idea, and there's tons of these ideas, right? And that's the street cleaning. So with street cleaning, just imagine the truck driving by, doing the street sweeper, driving by, cleaning the street. If somebody's parked on that side of the street where you're not supposed to be because they're street cleaning, well, that person's going to get a ticket in the mail. So what the examples here I'm giving, I'm trying to show some of the infraction types that are really, really well designed for a ticket by mail. Next slide. So the previous slide I spoke about infraction types. Now I'm going to talk about, in this specific case with Galveston, is a particular zone. Butch spoke about it. This is the seawall. On the seawall, there's a lot of traffic, and it's well designed for ticket by mail. So if you look at the enforcement seawall, in this zone, there's no tickets will be put on the dash of the car. The only mode of payment is pay by phone, and you can see that the pay by phone on the picture, the pay by phone sign there, it's zone 5004. The LPR that drive through there, any car that hasn't paid will be sent to the ticket reviewer screen to see if that car deserves a ticket or not. And in future phases, like Butch mentioned, they're looking at possibly doing downtown and the hospital area also. Next slide. So when the LPR vehicle goes through on the seawall, they will be in a collector mode, meaning that the driver just drives down the street, down that street, and all they do is collect license plates. That's all they're going to do. They don't get out of the car to put a ticket on the windshield. So no interaction from the enforcement officers that are required. They just stay in their air-conditioned car and where it's safe. Other zones will continue to be enforced the traditional way, which is not a problem. So the way this is going to work is when the LPR car is going to go on the seawall, it will automatically set itself in collector mode, which uses AutoZone for detection, or it could also be manually put in that collector mode. Next slide. Okay, so the next slide. So, well, as I was explaining, so the first step here is the vehicle LPR. I just explained that. That LPR is going to be in collector mode. All that information, any parking right. So if somebody didn't pay for parking and that license plate was captured a couple times, that information is going to be sent to our command center, the GTEC command center, for a review to see if that person deserves a ticket or not. And obviously there's a whole bunch of configurations that comes with the system, and I'll explain that a little bit in the next slides. Then all that information is sent to the ticket reviewer screen. So somebody is going to be reviewing to see if this car deserves a ticket or not. And if there's any errors, actually this screen will gives you the possibility to edit the information. I'll be showing that in the next slide. So with all this I just spoke about, you have 100% accuracy on the plate read and the ticket that should be sent out. So after these steps, of course, that information is sent to DMV, and then ticket by mail and all that is automated. So on this screen, what I'm showing is a screenshot of the ticket reviewer screen, okay? So on the left, you have the screenshot of the license plate. The state is blanked out there purposely. And then you have the digitized OCR of the license plate right beside it. And by the way, that information can be edited if it's not correct. And then of course you have the state, what state that license plate is from. And of course that is obviously blanked out for obvious reasons. And then that can be edited also. And then the person reviewing this can simply just accept it or reject it. And if it's accepted, automatically that will be sent out to DMV for registered owner information. Okay, so the ticket by mail steps, I just went through it quickly. Review the process at the end of the shift to validate or edit the information. Once that's done, then do a DMV lookup for registered owner information. And then auto ticket generation and letters sent out in the mail. So it's all automated. So bottom line benefits, and these answers all basically what the city's asked us to do is you can do more enforcement with the same staff, which equals better compliancy, safer for officers, and reduced traffic congestion, so which answers exactly to what the city requires. Next slide. So in this auto ticket configurator, I just want to explain quickly what on the top part here where it says parking LPR scan timeline, I'm trying to give you examples of how this would work. So in this example I'm giving, as you can see here from the beginning, you could set up a 20-minute convenience time, meaning that you're giving the person 20 minutes time to pay once they've parked, and a 15-minute grace period. And these are just examples, not the way Galveston works. I'm going to let maybe Butch explain how they do it in Galveston. Go ahead, Butch.
Yeah, what we do here, once a vehicle parks, we give them 15 minutes to pay to park, if that's what they're going to do, or leave. Once they pay to park, it'll scan. So let me back up one. We have to roll by and we scan the license plate. We come back after 15 minutes and scan it again. If they have paid, then we keep going. If they have not paid, then it alerts us and we stop and issue a parking citation. If they have paid to park and the time is exhausted, then it'll alert us again, and then we stop and issue them a citation. We don't have a grace period here. We do have a convenience time in the beginning, but nothing at the end.
Okay, so in this example, is not what Galveston's doing, but it's just to illustrate a little bit of how it would work. So every city is different. So obviously the system can be configured to match what the city requirements are. So in the first example I'm showing here, the person parked at 1:45. There was an LPR scan at 1:40, then an LPR scan at 2 o'clock. The person paid by 1:59, so they're okay here. Then they paid until 2:30. And then they left at 2:40, and this third LPR scan was at 3 o'clock. So in the first case, that would not generate any tickets. In the second example case, the person parked at 2:10, they never paid. Of course, that's going to end up being a ticket by mail automatically. The third example is somebody parked and paid at 1:45 for 1 hour. So that would bring him to 2:45. And LPR car scanned again at 3 p.m. So case 3 would also be a no ticket. Next slide. In the future later phases, this is something that Butch is thinking of putting in for like the hospital area, where there could be some tightly packed cars or motorcycles that are all packed together. That type of enforcement with a vehicle LPR is a little bit more difficult. So handheld LPR could be a good benefit for the city in those specific cases. But overall, a vehicle LPR is much more efficient, especially like for areas like the seawall. It's the technology to use in those cases. Next slide. So building a solid foundation, core benefits. The system's going to improve compliancy, obviously, because vehicle LPR can read a lot of plates in a day. So, and of course, the more sampling you do, the better it's going to be. Of course, that'll discourage abuse. When people see that their cars are being scanned all the time, they're going to be more. I think they're going to want to pay more often than they don't. Improves productivity, of course, because you don't have to stop and go all the time. Removes traffic congestion. In this case, is very important. You guys saw that picture of that seawall. A lot of cars, a lot of traffic, so that'll answer that need. And increase safety and parking enforcement staff. I just wanted to also, that's obvious why it's going to bring up, a better safety for parking enforcement officers, because they don't have to get out of the car and possibly get hit by a car. But there's also a trend, I would say, that we've seen. I've spoken to other cities, and there seems to be an uptick in aggressive people towards enforcement officers. So that's also an enabler to consider a ticket by mail, because some of these areas where parking enforcement officers have to go, and it seems since COVID, people don't have the same patience they used to have. And from talking to several cities, a lot of them say that they seem to, without having hard evidence, in front of me, it seems like a lot of cities are complaining that enforcement officers more than ever are being harassed. So that's also, a reason to look at possibly ticket by mail. That's it. I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Butch. Very informative. And Butch, great description of your city, how you guys are currently doing things. And Mike, good description of the technology. So I'm going to try to cover the Q&A period. I see there's been some questions coming in. And for those who want to post questions, please post them in the Q&A channel. That's how I'm organizing them, rather than the chat. So some of these questions will be asked to Butch and Mike, and I'll try to direct ones if I know it's for Butch or Mike specifically. I'll try to do that. So I'll start off with, you mentioned aggression, Mike and Butch. I'm curious, are you seeing an increased aggression towards your officers somewhat recently?
Yes, we have. It seems like they have, like you said, less patience. And if they're caught doing something wrong, they want to be aggressive towards whoever's telling them what they're doing wrong. So this is another great resource for us to prevent that from happening. We don't want to put our parking enforcement in harm's way if we can keep from it.
Thank you, Butch. In regards, I see questions a little bit coming about the legislation, the ordinance, in terms of being able to issue tickets by mail, Butch, at least in the state of Texas. What would you say about that? Because some people are wondering, what do they have to do in order to do that, and maybe even in Texas kind of thing?
Well, for what we've done here in Galveston, we actually started a few years back whenever we had our Citizens Alumni group that had gone to our Citizens Police Academy, and they want to be involved in the community as well. So we changed our parking violations from a criminal offense to a civil offense. That enables a civilian to issue a parking citation, and instead of contesting it and going before a judge as you would a criminal offense, you're going before a hearing officer that works for the municipal court. So that enables us to issue the citations here in Galveston.
Thank you, Butch. Good answer. Just a general question for you, Butch, in your terms of your operations. How many LPR vehicles and staff are currently being utilized?
I have 4 vehicles and 4 parking enforcement deputies.
Perfect. So in terms of LPR, I'm getting some questions, and I think this might go to Mike. In terms of misreads or OCR accuracy, as you're scanning plates, because you have that reviewing process, does it mean that misreads of that nature don't matter as much?
Yeah, it doesn't matter as much. Obviously, there's a confidence levels that come with the LPR reads. So LPR reads that have less confidence, people reviewing the ticket reviewer screen will be able to see that and quickly see if there's an error with the OCR read or the state, and that can be edited. It has to be 100%. You don't want to do any registered owner information based on information that's not correct. So the system's built so that it has to be 100%.
Thank you, Mike. And I guess I'll ask you another question, Mike. This concept seems like a big leap in technology. Why is it not more utilized, do you think, in this day and age?
I can't really, I think it's got such great benefits. I think maybe because a lot of people think that, it's kind of change the whole, how you're doing things and completely swap it out. And that's why I started the webinar in mentioning that, this is just you can start with one infraction. Like in Washington, D.C., they do ticket by mail for bike lane, but they don't do ticket by mail on any other type of infraction. So, you can pick and choose in areas where you think you can have better efficiency. And especially that now that officers are being harassed even more now, I'm seeing more uptake on this technology. So, we already have 3 customers using ticket by mail, and we think that we're just at the beginning, at the cusp of it, to be quite honest.
And I know we've had other webinars about this topic, and I think with Ocean City, they utilize the concept of invoice by mail rather than ticket to try to get around maybe some of those legislative hurdles. And if people go back and look at that webinar, they could potentially utilize maybe John Fournier and contact us, who also has a lot of experience dealing with all those legislative hurdles, as I mentioned. So good answer, Mike. And I mean, I just wanted to see, because the people are asking certain questions in that regards, and I wanted to get your answer. And I think not rolling it all out at the same time, where it's not just all or nothing, I think that misunderstanding may also be a part to this as well. All right, and wow, you guys are really busy with questions. So let's see what I can get for the next one. I got another one about, and I'm going to ask Butch a little bit, because since Butch, you have your officers doing this. If I respond, or Mike, maybe it sounds more like it's coming from the vendor in some ways. But how do you deal with all these cars that are parked super close together, like nearly bumper to bumper on the seawall? Like, how does the LPR technology perform, I guess, is what they're kind of asking.
Well, the license plate readers that we use are very proficient. And if we find one where they're bumper to bumper, then that's going to be another issue in itself, because now they got people blocked in, and we're probably going to come up there and we're going to tow cars because they're not parked in designated parking spaces. But if we get something where we have to get out and walk, we have the ability to use a handheld Android phone and enter it in manually. That's what we're looking at trying to get away from in the future, but we still have that ability today. It's more time consuming. However, we do have the ability to still determine if they paid to park. If not, they get a ticket.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Butch, but I think you guys are using SUVs, and your cameras are mounted on top of the SUV. So it's got a pretty good angle of attack. So I think even if the cars are parked close, and they're LSAG cameras, and they're very pretty efficient. So I think in most cases you're probably pretty good with those, right?
Most definitely. Rarely do we ever come up where we don't get a read due to being too close to to the vehicle behind it. But if that were the case, we still have the ability to manually enter it and determine if they paid there.
All right, thank you, guys. I know it wasn't the easiest question, but people want to know the reality versus what we're just presenting, and I think that's a good answer. Here's another one that's challenging is, how do you deal with handicap placards? And I'm just reading the language that was written. And in terms of do you have a special workflow? Meaning, do people still have to pay regardless of their disability? Meaning, when you scan their plate, you know that they've paid? Or do you have a special thing where they don't have to pay? And if so, how do you go about dealing with that?
We honor handicap placards, handicap plates, Purple Hearts, disabled vets, all of the ones that are extended the courtesy of parking for free. That enables them to park where you have to pay to park for free. Our system will automatically alert if they haven't paid, and then it's the human part of it kicks in, and we have to verify that there isn't a legitimate valid placard hanging, or the plates that they are displaying are those that enable them to park for free. Once we make that determination, then we move on to the next one.
Jason, I saw a question earlier. Sorry for jumping in. I saw a question from Dave Honorado. I was just looking down. He sent out a question in the chat, and I just want to answer it. I just want to make sure we get to it. He asked about what information is sent out with the ticket by mail. So whatever is put in the envelope, what's in it. So that can be configured, Dave. And in most cases, we have obviously the ticket, the picture evidence of the information of where that car was caught, and other information like the Latin long with the map view. A lot of different information can be put on the ticket by mail, and of course, to what and how the city wants to put that together. So all the evidence we have can be put on that letter.
I'll ask you a few more here. I'm seeing one with something like bike lane infractions. Are there many disputes? And does the LPR system indicate the speed of the vehicle during the infraction? And how how would it know the vehicle wasn't passing through the bike lane?
Okay, so first of all, if the car is moving, they would not get a ticket. That's a different type. If they're driving in a bike lane, then that would be a different type of infraction. This is for people that are stopped in the bike lane. So in Washington D.C., the way it works is they take two photos, one to show that the car hasn't moved. If the car hasn't moved, so somebody's waiting to, somebody wants to get in the car and they're just waiting for someone, that's a ticket by mail automatically. So there's a before and after picture that is taken. If the person is driving in the bike lane, that's another level of danger. I think that would be something that the police maybe would get involved. But in DC, for the parking enforcement officers, they take a before and after picture. And if they can show that that car hasn't moved like within a 2-3 seconds, that's a ticket.
Thank you, Mike. While we're getting on the nice meaty ones, let's ask another one. Are you able to look up, send out out-of-state citations? Is the system linked to the state's DMVs or a national one? Does the system look up the address automatically, or is it an automated process?
Yes, it can look up to any DMV. And yes, it is an automated process.
And it does out-of-state and in-state, just to emphasize.
And of course, the city would decide, Galveston would decide, if there's somebody from, I don't know what state, but maybe certain states, if there's not, if there's 2 or 3 tickets from, I don't know, from Alaska, are they going to bother with it? I'm not sure. That would be a decision that Galveston would make.
Thank you, Mike. How long does it take to get tickets in the mail and any pictures related to that violation? Like, I guess they're kind of wondering, like, when I get a ticket issued normally, it physically is put on my dash. So kind of ballpark-ish, and I guess some of the nuances to that answer, well, why would you have different answers in terms of how long it would take, and how long would it potentially typically take?
Well, some of it's tied to DMV, of course. The amount of time it takes for DMV to be registered owner information is going to be key. But typically with something like this, you're in collector mode all day, collecting plates all day. And that's reviewed in the evening after that parking time of that day is done. And only after will it be reviewed. I'm not sure how Butch's group is going to do that, if they're going to do it in the evening or the next morning. So you have that one delay, and then plus the delay of the DMV RO information. Once the DMV RO information is sent in, then a ticket by mail can be automated and sent out a ticket by mail, which is the same day. So the only thing I'm not sure about at this moment is the amount of time it's going to take for RO from DMV in Texas.
Thank you, Mike. And I know I'm sending you some meaty ones there. That's why we have you here as our VP of Marketing and Sales, of course. Here's another somewhat interesting one. I mean, it depends on the context of that they're asking it. How does the system determine what time the vehicle parked? And I'll take a quick stab. I mean, with what Butch is doing on the seawall, he's just checking if they've paid or not using pay by cell. So, in other type of areas, if you're going to do timing enforcement, that's a different story. But at least in the context we're talking, as soon as he scans it, we check in real time to see if they've paid with the pay by cell provider. We get a response in real time, and we can then see if they're in violation or not. Now, if you're doing a timing enforcement, you would actually have to pass the first time, get the picture, get the information, get the timestamp on when you saw them. And then if you saw them later, and let's say they were there for longer than an hour in an hour zone, then they would be in violation. So you'd be able to determine it in a few different ways depending on the context, but generally they're either paid or not for the use case of Butch. Quite a few questions did come in. And again, we're getting something related to laws changing and ticket by mail. And what I'll say about that is, depending on your state, there may be different ordinances or different statutes that are come into play. I asked Butch before, and obviously they wouldn't be going about doing this if they couldn't. So each state needs to look at the specifics of that ordinance. And I mentioned before as a tip, in Ocean City, Maryland, they use the word invoice by mail rather than ticket by mail, because all the legislation seemed to be tied to a ticket. So they were able to pull it off in that way. I'll recommend try to look back for one of our other webinars. And if you have issues finding that on our website, just please email one of us, our marketing team, and we'll be able to send you links to that webinar and you'll get a little bit more information about that process. All right. Now, in terms of you, Butch, people are wondering when you're going live with this, and they're saying, can you provide the date, month, when you began using this or when you will be using this? Is this an initiative going on right now, or it's coming up very shortly, your usage of ticket by mail on the seawall?
We're in the process of getting implemented. We're hoping to have that happen within the next 60 days. But we've got some, like I said early on, BMV seems to be the hiccup, and we're working diligently with them to try to get that worked out so we can move forward.
Thank you, Butch. And I'm getting more questions again. I guess they want to know specifically with you, Butch, did you have to change the law to send citations by mail?
We changed our ordinance from and created a parking violation as a civil violation. It's not a criminal violation. And that's so that our civilians can issue the citations rather than have to have a police officer issue the citation, as was the case with the red light cameras. I think that popped up earlier. And the problem with that is a criminal violation requires a police officer to physically see it and initiate the stop to issue the citation. This is a civil violation, which doesn't require those same contact.
Thank you, Butch. I think it really is a popular topic. We've gotten a lot of questions on that, so I appreciate your clarification.
I know in most states they have toll roads, and if you don't pay on a toll road, you're going to get a ticket in the mail for not paying your toll. In Texas, it's a big thing here in Texas. I think we're going to be ahead of the game as far as the issuing the citation, because it may take 30 days to get one from a toll authority if you fail to pay. Ours are going to be in a few days. That's it.
Thank you, Butch. But really, that seems to be the most popular question. I guess people are wondering, what's the obstacle for me to start using this today? And then usually it comes to some statute, some law, or some ordinance. So I understand why this is coming out so much. Mike, I'll give you another meaty one here. And this is a very good question. Since Galveston is a tourist destination, what type of outreach was done to the rental car companies? They normally charge the customer's credit card when they receive a notice. So I guess that angle, since there's probably a lot of rental cars, how would we respond to that question?
Yeah, I have an answer for that. I just want to also mention that Butch and I, when we wanted to present this, we wanted to give the information as quickly as we could, because we knew that there would be a lot of questions coming in. So this is a good webinar. We're happy to share this information with everyone. Concerning rental cars, with the system that we use, we have access with a company that we work with, all rental car company license plates. So if a car that is rented is captured in our system, that ticket will be automatically paid to the city, and then our third-party company is going to ensure that they're going to deal with the rental companies. But at the end of the day, Galveston will get payment right out of the gate from our third-party supplier.
Thank you, Mike. I'm not taking it easy on you today, but that's why you're here. So I'm getting an interesting question. We document infractions with multiple photos from multiple points of view as a defense against disputes. How does this system increase compliance without those? And we'll do a 1-2 punch here, Mike. I'll give my 2 cents and then you'll give yours. First and foremost, we typically use the GPS, which tells you where you are, and we can take more than one picture, meaning you can get a crop zoom of the license plate as well as a situational picture, which takes the surroundings a little bit, and in terms also of the actual car, the color. You can see the make, the model based on a lot of the pictures that you're taking here. So multiple pictures from multiple points of view, depending on what it is not necessarily required. So in terms of LPR-based enforcement, The ordinance, if you're doing timing enforcement matters, where are you moving the car, or are you staying within the same zone? The evidence that's tied to that, such as the GPS coordinates and the supporting evidence of the photos. So generally, when that is the case, we don't necessarily need to go around the car and take millions of pictures. But if you wanted to, I wouldn't suggest it on the seawall if he's trying not to stop. There's no reason why you can't get out and take additional pictures with a handheld. So Mike, any more feedback to put on that? And I'll say it again, we document infractions with multiple photos from multiple points of view as defense against the disputes. And how does your system increase compliance without those?
Yeah, I think you answered the question perfectly, Jason. I mean, with the that Butch is currently using, they're going to be, I mean, the evidence is going to be overwhelming with the GPS and everything else. And, you know, depending of what area you're covering, as an example, if you're covering an area where it's, let's say you can read part in a time zone area and they need to capture the valve stem, well, then you would have to have equipment that can actually capture the valve stem. And so every infraction type or situation might require some other types of evidence, but for what Butch is going to be using it for, he's gonna have, you know, they're going to be bulletproof. They're going to have everything they need to be able to get payment on those tickets. It's going to be overwhelming, the information that we have.
Thank you, Mike. Similarly, on an interesting related note, like you mentioned AutoZone, you know, how does that work? Kind of like, how does that work, and what advantage does it give to the officer? Because you briefly mentioned it.
Yeah, the AutoZone it's so when they go to the seawall from downtown, we'll say, the LPR will see that it's based on the lat and long of where the car is. We'll know that it's now in a zone, a collector. Let's call it a collector zone. So it's going to fall into that type of you know, function. So,
yeah, and the key is, Mike, mainly when we have geofences. So we paint a picture on a map, and if your vehicle is within that little geofence, it will know you're in that zone. So as you move in and out of zones, the officer does not have to change the zone manually, which a lot of systems I know do. We have configurations where it does that too. But when you use our AutoZone, which takes advantage of the GPS and the city GIS, which we define the zones themselves, then you can get a really automated solution, and you don't have to do that manually anymore. Another one, Mike, did the time frame to either pay or appeal the ticket change since the ticket is now mailed? I guess they're kind of getting into life cycle processing and the rules and configurations that could go about that. So again, did the time frame to either pay or appeal the ticket change since the ticket is now mailed? Meaning the aging, the
maybe
time.
Butch, do you want to maybe kind of grab, because the tickets are sent to the court system. Did you want to answer that, Butch, or
yeah, I'll answer that one. Currently, it's a 14-day cycle from the time you receive the citation on your windshield. Knowing that it's going to take a few days for that ticket to get to you in the mail, we've extended the 14 days. It's not 14 days anymore. It will be 20 days. So from the time you get your vehicle gets scanned and the process of it getting the ticket in the mail, you should have a ticket anywhere in the United States within 5 days of being scanned.
Thank you, Butch. I'll answer this, and then I'll throw it to Butch. How often do the cars drive by to collect information, and are you missing any payments? The first thing I'll say is we have very strong interfaces with our pay-by-cell integration points, meter integration points, permit integration points. So the key is making sure those interfaces are up and running. We monitor them to make sure that they are. Now, in regards to missing payments, since we do everything in real time, unless there's an issue specifically with somebody's phone or someone's trying to make a payment, everything usually comes in very seamlessly, and alarms go off if something is not working. Now, the question why I want to bring in Butch here is because how often do the cars drive in collection mode? The key here is, compared to right now, what I could tell you is they're not going to stop anymore. So I'll throw it back to Butch. What impact is this going to have on the fact that you can probably drive around a little more, and I guess just ballpark, how much more often do you think they'll be able to drive by using this new methodology?
Well, I want to be conservative with my numbers because we don't actually know the answer yet.
True.
But I would speculate they're going to be able to cover their districts at least 25% more than they are right now. That number may go up. We don't know yet, but we're speculating not having to stop and put tickets on windshields is going to increase their mobility time to keep collecting data.
And safety, as we mentioned before. But thank you, Butch. I appreciate, and we don't expect any less from you, being fully transparent in this regards.
Yeah, and plus, and I agree with Butch. Being conservative, that's fine, but the sampling rate for sure is going to go up. So if the sampling rate goes up, the enforcement is going to be better and more accurate. So I
Absolutely,
think hand in hand.
And Butch, I will test you on your prediction later, and we'll see who wins the free beer. Last question that I have, and guys, if anyone still has more questions, we still have a little time left. You can send them in. Do we switch our whole enforcement software to GTechna, or does it work hand in hand with other systems like T2 Flex or AIMS?
I would say it's something that can work in parallel. As an example, in Washington, D.C., they also use Conduit, and we're also there. So these systems can collaborate. I don't think there should be any issues there.
All right, and I'm just waiting for any last questions. So if there's questions related to pricing, anything to do with that nature, I recommend you contact us after the fact so we can give you a more intelligent answer. It's very hard to give any kind of answer without knowing your current situation with what you have and what your exact requirements are and the size of your current operation. So anything related to that, please contact us afterwards. And you can see on the Q&A, you could even potentially contact tim.taylor@gtechna.com, and he will send that to the right resource. And I do appreciate all the questions that have come in so far, and here we go. Did enforcement using LPR become less cumbersome over time? And I guess that's for you, Butch. I guess initially, when you go from manual tickets to rolling in this type of technology, for officers, it could be a bit overwhelming at first. All the processes that come with it, all the data that gets captured, there's definitely some more things to see. So I'll say it again, did enforcement using LPR become less cumbersome over time, Butch?
Without a doubt. Anytime you're starting something new, paper tickets have been around for forever. Technology has come to where we are, and automatic license plate reader is definitely the cutting edge for parking enforcement for us, for sure. And it definitely has changed how we do parking enforcement in Galveston. Same as this ticket by mail will change how we do our parking enforcement on the seawall, and ultimately move throughout the city as time moves on. So without a doubt, automatic license plate readers changed how we regulate parking in Galveston.
And it looks like the evolution is continuing and taking advantage of this LPR to go even further. And I commend you for that, Butch. Here's another one on Mike. People are asking for Butch's contact information. I don't know if we've provided it.
If they can email me, I don't have a problem with that. And then we can communicate, because I'm sure they probably have other questions. As when this webinar ends, they're going to say, oh, I wish I'd asked this question because I have a problem like that. So I don't have a problem with giving out with y'all issuing out my email address.
Okay, so what we can do is you see the Q&A screen. It has tim.taylor@gtechna.com. If you want Butch's information, instead of putting it out in this video, you can actually contact us and we'll send that out so the whole world doesn't start emailing Butch for fun, because I know I would. So I think we're getting very close. I'm going to try to process the last question, I guess, here. Have people reacted with anger initially? Did they claim you're trying to trick them, that it isn't fair? Not sure the context of that question. Maybe they're referring to the fact that you're not putting the ticket on the dash. I'm not sure, but keep in mind, Butch mentioned that there were some issues which triggered this. And the fun thing is, when the whole area is congested and it's complete peak of tourist season, and you get this LPR vehicle just stopped on the road, taking his sweet time, checking the vehicle, taking pictures, issuing the ticket, everyone stopped behind them. So people get very angry. So it's not like Butch hasn't heard complaints about this. And the safety of the officers comes into question because people want to assault you and they say, hey, can you please move, you colorful language? So the question is, either way, he was getting some issues. And so I'll let Butch answer now, but that's at least describing the picture here. So, do people get angry at this? And in terms of the solution you're proposing, do you think it'll anger them further?
I don't know that it should anger them anymore. Like I said, I don't have firsthand knowledge of that because we haven't implemented it yet. I know they get angry when they get a ticket on their windshield right now. We've probably heard every excuse in the books, but time will tell if the anger increases any. The best part is they're not going to be angry at the officer right there on the scene and putting the officer in danger.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And plus, this wasn't just. Correct me if I'm wrong, Butch, but it wasn't just. The city decided to do this because they got a lot of feedback from citizens complaining that the officers were blocking traffic, and so there was a lot of feedback from the citizens complaining about this. And one of the reasons they want to put this in place is to reduce the complaints from the citizens of the enforcement officers blocking traffic. So. It's another reason why they're implementing this.
Well, that's exactly right, Mike. It's the complaints forced us to look at options, and this is our best option right here.
So we expect a reduction in complaints, and we'll see when it goes. So another thing for me to measure up your predictions, Butch, but I think that one's pretty solid, rock solid, actually. I'm going to field a last question here, Mike, very briefly, related to the ticket reviewing process. Like, what should city expect in this regards? Like, I know this is not easy to answer because you don't have anything to do with their city, their size, their volume, the number of tickets to be mailed. In terms of existing staff being utilized and like just this process, if they're not doing it, I guess they're just trying to see the full scale of when this gets deployed. What will they need on their end to make this run efficiently and effectively?
Yeah, it's hard to put the numbers to this, how much effort, because obviously it depends how many tickets you're generating and how many tickets you have to review. But obviously you can also take advantage of the confidence level of the LPR. So if your confidence level from the LPR car is very high, you might not have to review that ticket. That could, basically what you need to make sure that the eyeballs look at least the infractions that, there's maybe a certain amount of uncertainty to them. So we can really reduce the amount of, let's call it reviewing by someone looking at the reviewing screen. So overall, I don't think it's a big task. It's probably like, an hour for an admin person to do. Actually, we had at the office when we first started doing it a couple of years ago, we had, one of our developers, they had their children, 12 years old and 13 years old, go through it to accept or reject the tickets and edit it. And it's very, very intuitive, easy to use. And I don't think it's a lot of workload.
I like that. They earn their allowance. I guess we won't suggest child labor for cities, but different people have different solutions to these things. So check our other webinars if you haven't seen any ticket by mail webinars. And at this point, I think we've expired our time for questions that are going to be asked. And I guess we'll bring back Kathleen. But thank you, Butch. Thank you, Mike, and everyone in the IPMI for making this possible. And for all the people who participated in asking questions, we appreciate good questions. So thank you, and come to our next one and keep them coming.
Thank you, everyone. At this time, we are going to conclude today's program. A special thank you to Mike, Butch, and Jason. Thank you very much. Thank you again to everybody who's joined us. This concludes today's presentation. We hope you have a great day, and you may now disconnect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.